Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Feldman. This week, Stephanie Stuckey tells Jay Goltz and Dana White about moving closer to the candy factory she recently bought to get a better feel for the people, the operation, and the challenges. Right now, those challenges include recruiting enough employees, absorbing increased supplier prices, and figuring out how much she should raise her own prices. We can only give up so much of our margin, right? She tells us. To which Jay responds, why give up any? Plus, we talk about competing for labor with Amazon, whether to require employees to get vaccinated, how to manage legal fees, and whether Dana's feelings of FUD have eased. Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which highlights the most important news of the day for business owners and which you can subscribe to at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week are regulars Jay Goltz, whose companies in Chicago include a picture frame business, Artist Frame Service, and a home furnishing store, Jason Home. Stephanie Stuckey, who is CEO of Stuckey's, the snack and road stop business best known for its pecan log rolls. And Dana White, who is CEO of Paralee Boyd, a chain of hair salons based in Detroit. The episode is titled, Adventures in Candyland. Welcome, Jay, Stephanie, and Dana. Great to have you here. Stephanie, let's start with you. The last time we talked to you, I think you said you were going to pick up and move to Rennes, Georgia, where your factory is. Did you do that?
I didn't move full time, but I am here for several weeks, and it's been quite the eye-opener. There's a difference in managing a company from your desk and actually being boots on the ground in the factory, seeing how things operate. So, yes, I'm semi-permanently here, or at least for 3 weeks. This is nearing the end of week 2.
Are you living in the factory, or?
I've rented an Airbnb. It's lovely.
And give us a quick overview. Are you happy with what you're learning or concerned? Where's your head at?
A bit of everything. I think we are experiencing at Stuckey's the same thing that you see throughout the manufacturing sector and throughout industry and business in general. We're struggling with employees and making sure that we're fully staffed. We're having supply chain issues and we're having issues with pricing. We are trying to figure out if we need to raise our prices because all down the supply chain, we're having increases. And so we're getting to the point where if we're going to start paying people more, plus we're having to pay more for our product, at some point, we can only give up so much of our margin, right? So that's what we're grappling with. But the labor issue in particular it's been so important to actually watch on the factory floor, see the different lines and understand the different job skills and making sure we have put in place a structure, not only for entry-level positions, but where people can feel like this is a place that they can stay.
Where do you stand right now in terms of labor? Do you have enough people?
We don't. So we've got a plan. We have put together a compensation structure, and we want to shore up the existing staff before we move into offering an entry-level position where the pay is higher. Because we can't offer entry-level people more than people who've already been here working the lines for a year or two. So not only are we putting in place a pay proposal where we're going to give increases for the existing team, but we're also going to put in training. We're going to put in specific skill sets and metrics that you have to hit. And if you do that, then you can advance up and earn more pay. So we're making sure we've got a tiered strategy, and we want to make sure we train people so that they can work on different lines. Right now, you tend to work in the pecan line, or you work on the chocolate line, you work in the packaging room, but there's very little crossover from one line to the other in the factory. So we really want to be able to cross-train, and that actually happened yesterday. We needed to get more pralines And we had to pull people from other lines to come in and help us make the pecan pralines. This is pecan praline. So we're covering our pecans in a praline flavor. And so we had to train them up before we could even start with the production. And that delayed everything. And we didn't meet our quota. And so we're going to have to work on Saturday. So that's just the reality of not having a strong structure in place, which we're doing. We're addressing it.
How many openings are you trying to fill right now?
Good question. I think immediate openings, and we're talking entry level working in the factory, 10, but we're going to be scaling up very quickly because pecan season starts in August. So it's really important that we try to get this structure in place as soon as possible and prototype it with a candy plant, which has a much smaller staff. Fully staffed will probably be about 35 on the candy line, but the pecan line's triple that. And the other thing we're working on is an incentive program. And I know a lot of companies do this, but totally makes sense. If you bring a friend to come work with us, you'll get an automatic bonus, a hiring bonus for bringing your friend on. And if the friend hits a 6-month mark staying with us, then we'll add another bonus. So we're trying to put incentives in place to refer a friend and help our employees. I think they can be some of the best ambassadors for working here, help them feel like they're part of making sure we're fully staffed and fully operational.
On a previous episode, Stephanie, you mentioned some concern that Amazon would be opening up a distribution center not far from you in the not too distant future and paying people upwards of $15 an hour. Have you figured out how much you're going to have to raise that entry-level wage?
Ideally, yeah, you meet what Amazon's paying, but we can't, not right now. So our solution to that is our entry level is going to be lower, but we have a program in place where you can rapidly start hitting these metrics and increasing your pay. So that's been our workaround. As people build up their skill set, we're going to have a pathway where they will very soon be making higher level wages that would be competitive. And the other advantage, and I've just been talking to the workers, I understand what their job duties are. And I'm talking to them in the break room and asking, like, where are you from? How far is your commute? Most of them live here in Rennes, Georgia, and they like the fact that they live right here. They don't have to get in their car. And transportation's an issue with some of these minimum wage workers or entry-level workers. So to be able to work literally right where you live and be able to walk to work or bike to work or easily carpool, that makes a difference. And they'd have a 40-minute commute to work for Amazon. So we're trying as much as possible to see if we can just recruit here in Rennes, Georgia.
Can I just throw in that Amazon is not going to hire every employee on earth?
Right.
That everyone acts as though, oh, well, Amazon's paying that. We have to. Really? Is Amazon going to hire 40 million people? I mean, it's a little, yeah, right. You also said something in the beginning I just want to play back for you. You said you can only absorb so much loss of margin.
That's right.
Okay, I would ask you the question, why are you
Why
absorbing
absorb
any?
As soon as I said that, I was thinking, Jay's going to say, don't absorb any margin.
But did you see how self-control I have? I waited a couple minutes before. No, but think about it. Home Depot
Right,
was paying
Dana?
$1 for 2x4s. Now they're paying $4. Do you think they reduced their margins? No, they're making a lot of money, charging more for the same markup. So I saw a guy on CNN, a restaurant owner being interviewed. He's having a hard time finding people, and he says he doesn't want to raise prices because the customers would have to pay it. And so what are the other options? Give really bad service or go out of business? Those are better options? I mean, it's an entrepreneur problem of being the fear of, oh my God, if I raise prices, it makes me a bad business person. No, it makes you a responsible business person.
Yeah, I mean, it's marketing. It's how you communicate the quality. And I mean, the driving force behind me wanting to buy a candy plant and get into manufacturing is that we can control the quality. Oh, by the way, we just got SQF certified this week, which was a 2-year effort.
Tell us what exactly that means.
So that predated our acquisition of the company, but that was a big selling point, was that we were going to get that certification. SQF certification is a food quality program, and it's very intensive. If you are in the food business and manufacturing business, there are certain standards that you have to adhere to in order to get this certification. And it deals with cleanliness. It deals with procedures and process that you put into place. It deals with workplace safety. It's very intense. And once you get it, it makes you much more marketable, your product. So there's a lot of big box retailers like Costco and Cracker Barrel and Walmart, and the list goes on and on. They either insist that you have SQF certification, or it's a plus factor when they're putting out a RFP for new product. They look at that, and it definitely helps you be more competitive. But it also just shows that you have good quality. So we have SQF certification, and then our product is real chocolate, real vanilla. It's not fake vanilla. It's unrefined sugar, no high fructose corn syrup. So we're putting in the very best ingredients, and that's going to cost more, but you're going to be able to taste the difference. And paying people to do quality work by hand also affects the quality of your product. So yeah, a lot of this is going to be marketing. We just have to put out there, we may be raising our prices, but you're going to get what you pay for. It's going to be an absolutely delicious product.
I have a question about the hiring, Stephanie. For the referral program, is there a cap on how many people an employee can refer?
We haven't implemented it yet, so we have not. That's a great question. That was not part of the proposal that was put together. We have an outside HR consultant who came in, and he works in a lot of food manufacturing facilities, so he knows our space, and he put the suggestion together. There was not a cap in the proposal he put together. I mean, what do you think?
Why would you put a cap?
I would.
Why?
Because, I have a friend of mine who's in the manufacturing space who had people working for them on a referral basis. And unless your culture is stronger than their relationship, when you'll have a ripple effect when there's problems. So you'll have one person who's working, and then they'll have an attitude, and then all of a sudden you start noticing that this group of people have this problem. They become a group think. It's just that these people live together, work together, their families were intertwined, and the leader, the matriarch, left, and 5 people left behind her. And she brought all those 5 people with her. So be mindful that when you hire, that the referral program is a great idea, but just make sure that they're not too tied to this person.
Well, that's a terrific point. And Lauren, if there are any listeners who have that experience, I'd welcome in the comments when this airs for listeners to share any advice or experience they have.
I'd love to hear that too. It's funny, with all the things I've been reading about the labor shortage and how desperate people are getting to hire, I kind of wonder if that might be a luxury to worry about at this point. It seems like so many people just need to hire people. They're relaxing standards. They're doing all kinds of things that I never would have expected them to do.
I'm in that boat. And I still hold it because I've learned when we've never hired like 4 or 5 people as a group, but we've hired sisters, mother-daughters, and we've learned that if one isn't performing and we hold them accountable, then both are affected. And it's only a matter of time before both quit.
Certainly that's a problem. I would argue it's not about limiting how many referrals. Perhaps you shouldn't be hiring mothers, daughters, immediate family members. Maybe that's a smarter strategy. You can send in as many as you want, but don't send in your child.
It's not just that, it's their relationship. So it's not just family. We've had people who were neighbors, but they've been neighbors for 10 years.
But I would also say it's important to take a step back and look at the bigger picture on this. Because you can form cliques and divisions within a company, whether you refer a friend or those just form post-employment. I think the bigger picture is, are you cultivating a culture where people feel like they belong to the company, that that they're working for something that really is meaningful to them?
No, that's all good, but I have an answer to that. The answer is yes. When you've got the right people, that's all true. We're talking about bringing strangers in, and you don't know who you're hiring, and that's where the issue is. This isn't cliques of people that have worked for you for 5 or 10, 3 years.
Jay, I want to go back to what you said about Amazon. obviously no one thinks that Amazon is going to hire everybody, but especially in a rural or semi-rural area, if Amazon comes in and opens a distribution center or one of their huge warehouses, that's got to have an impact on
Clearly,
what other people pay in the area. So what are you saying?
No, here's what I'm saying. People act as though all of a sudden, because Amazon's there, it changes everything.
But they're hiring a lot of people.
They are. And certainly in some situations, I'm sure it's devastating. But generally speaking, it's a gigantic pool of people. What percentage of employees is an Amazon hiring? Like in Chicago, it can't be 0.1%. Now, maybe in a small town, it's 80%. But
it has ripple effects. I think, we've covered this in the morning report a little bit. I've seen people make the argument that to some extent, Amazon is setting a de facto minimum wage because you have other companies that, restaurants, chains, Chipotle, that have raised their minimum wage in reaction to Amazon.
Except that's a stew. There's so many other things going on in the world right now between people staying at home, taking care of their kids, people that are still getting unemployment checks. There's so many other factors involved. You can't just go, oh, it's Amazon. And I think some people are thinking, oh, no, it's not just Amazon. There's 6 different things that are affecting this quote unquote labor shortage, because one should take a pause and go, and why do we have a labor shortage? It is a little curious.
Wait, that's a different issue.
Well, no, but it's gotten in people's heads, and they think that it's all about Amazon. And, to call it a de facto minimum wage is pushing it a little bit. It certainly has an effect on the market, but it's not like, oh, you must pay. In Chicago, it's moot simply because the minimum wage in 2 weeks is going to be $15 an hour. So for me, it doesn't matter. It's $15 either way. But if you're out in another place where there's no Amazon around, and it's like I said, it's not like they're hiring 50% of the employees out there. I mean, I think it's been overplayed a little bit. It certainly has an effect.
I agree with you. I think it's overplayed. You have to look at the myriad of factors, and you have to focus on what's your differentiator. I'm not going to be able to, Stuckey's can't compete with Amazon, but we can stress what makes us a great place to work. And a lot of that is going to be culture, treating people right, being a hometown local business. So cultivating employees who live and work right here in Rennes, Georgia, getting to know the community, being a part of the community. So we're just trying to figure out, and of course, certainly being more competitive. There is an impact. If Amazon's paying $15 an hour, we're going to absolutely have to increase our wages somewhat to be at least in shooting range of being competitive.
No, for sure. We absolutely have dramatically increased our starting wages, partially because we're forced to with the minimum wage. But I guess there's kind of my black and white argument. Yes, I have to for sure, because the Chicago minimum wage is $15. That's not the same as, oh, I've got an Amazon 10 miles from me, I got to raise them. I mean, it's a little, there's some truth to it, but it's certainly not like having a minimum wage.
Steffi, tell us more about your factory. Any other surprises, pleasant or otherwise?
Just little things that you notice if you're actually on site. For example, because of COVID, the break room has largely been shut down, and it is starting to open up, but the break room's pretty dismal. So and the refrigerator only half works. The freezer part isn't working, and it's really grungy. And so I was just thinking, we need to brighten up the break room. We need to get some vending machines in here. People don't have anywhere to sit outside, so they're taking their lunch breaks in their cars.
Ouch.
And so that's not really building a community. If we had some nice benches with some awning, people could sit outside and get to know one another and have a nice break. So just being on site and actually observing, and I make a point several times a day. It's great to get away from your desk anyway. I put on my lovely hairnet and I walk the factory floor, and I understand, what are you making? How do you make it? What's the process? How many units do we, how many pounds what's our production goal for the day, for the week? What orders are we filling? Where are they shipping to? And just, there's no substitute for just really being on the ground and understanding how things work.
I've been running a factory for 30 years, and I can tell you some significant things I did that cost very little. First of all, I've got, let's say, 40 production workers. If you walked into my break room, you'd notice I've got like 6 microwaves. Like, why should someone have to wait in line to microwave if they've
and
only got
microwaves are so inexpensive.
They're like under $100. It's unbelievable.
Right.
They're under $100.
Easy
So why
fix.
not? Right. Why not have a whole line of them so nobody has to wait? Number 2, I got like 3 refrigerators. Like, refrigerators are cheap. And then here's the third one that's very tricky that I can't emphasize enough. I found this one out years ago. Everybody's got a locker.
We have
I think
that.
it is, yeah, good. Because I think that is critical. It just makes a difference. And like, and my break room's nice, and they appreciate the fact you've only got a limited amount of time. Why would you want to have to wait 2 minutes for someone to get their food out of the thing?
You clock in, clock out. So absolutely.
Actually, the only expense you're going to have, I'm warning you, is you probably have to put another electrical thing in, because if you put 6 microwaves on one line, it's too much. So you might have to pay a little electrical to get another line put in there. But it was well worth it. It's cost next to nothing to amortize it.
Things like an appealing break room, they make a big difference.
Jay, anything going on in your shop in terms of coming out of the pandemic? Are anything happening with masks or vaccinations?
I just spent an entire hour on a Zoom call with all of my managers discussing the mask thing, because I've got everything from a factory with people working fairly close to each other, to a framing showroom where customers are coming in, to an outdoor garden where we sell. My home store, Jason Homes, sells plants. I've got a 6,000 foot space out there with plants that are outside, to in the store. And we're trying to figure out masks, no mask, is it voluntary? And it took us an hour to flesh this out, because it's not simple. So we decided, for right or wrong, this is what we decided. We're going to ask if they've been vaccinated. We're not going to ask them why they haven't. Number 3, if they want to wear a mask, they certainly can wear a mask. Number 4, there are certain areas where everyone needs to still wear a mask, because 50% of my production people have not gotten the vaccination, and we cannot.
You've already asked them. You know that already.
Yeah, we've asked them, and 50% of them haven't had it. And in Chicago, I looked the other day, it's down to about 5% to what it was at the peak. 5% of people are getting affected compared to the peak of it. Like, when it gets down to 3, maybe that's going to be a game changer. Then the question becomes, do you ask for documentation that they've had the vaccinations? And I said, I think that's insulting to someone that's worked here a long time. But then the guy in the factory says, I am concerned about some people are concerned about other people not telling the truth. So then the question is, do you leave it up to the managers? And after an hour, I agreed, okay, tell everybody, please bring in the document. I'm not thrilled about it, but if I had to choose between, leaving it up to each manager or not. So we're asking for your documentation explaining, we're asking everybody. And we're also going to look at this every single week, because things are changing quickly.
There are no ramifications for someone who isn't vaccinated other than they have to wear a mask?
Right. I do not feel comfortable mandating that you've got to go get a shot. Everybody's got their own personal thing. I'm not thrilled they don't have the shot, but I am not about to start telling people, go get a shot or you're fired. So we're going to make them wear masks. And then it gets to the issue of, it's getting hot out, and, it's a little more uncomfortable. But this could be very different in 3 or 4 weeks from now. But right now, the customers aren't hassling us yet. They're coming in, they're putting their mask on, but it's changing quickly. And I would just say, I've had Cub tickets for years. They just activated my season tickets. I will tell you, I'm having a hard time selling Friday's game, which is St. Louis, which is a hot game. I still think there's a lot of people that aren't ready to go to Wrigley Field. And I can kind of tell by how quick the tickets are selling. So I don't think everybody's throwing off their mask and going, ooh, we're back to normal. I still think there's plenty of the population that's proceeding carefully.
What's it like for you, Stephanie, at the factory?
Well, we require face masks when you're on the food production line. So whether they've been vaccinated or not, we have the face mask required. So we really have not asked people if they...
Was that required before the pandemic?
Yes, that's my understanding.
So that's just a long-standing rule.
Everyone in the food production area has a face mask and a hairnet and gloves.
They're making food. I would hope
yes.
so.
Well, that helps. That makes it easier.
Even in the office area, we don't have a ton of office staff, but the office staff that are there are pretty far apart spaced. So it really has not been an issue. In our warehouse, same thing. People are pretty far apart. We just have 2 offices in the warehouse. So we really haven't had to deal with it.
There is no perfect solution to any of this. There is no one size fits all. Everyone's going to be happy. Somebody can argue, wait a second, I had my vaccination. Why do I have to wear a mask? And other people could say, why? I mean, there's no matter what you choose, it's possible someone's going to be unhappy with your choice.
What's it like for you, Dana? Any issues in your shop?
No, my staff is 100% vaccinated. We're going to ask them to bring in their card. We're not requiring it, but they all are. Both shots. We still have on masks in our salon because the guests that come in don't necessarily tell the truth. And my priority is taking care of my staff. Even though they're vaccinated, I still don't want them to get sick. Even though the vaccine will help them get through it and it won't be as harsh on them, I don't want them to get it at all. And so until the numbers in Michigan go down, like way down, even though the governor...
Where are they now?
They're significantly less. I don't know exactly as of today, but they're significantly less, but they're still there, with the holiday, Memorial Day, they're still waiting on what that's going to bring. And so again, I said, wear a mask until it's way down. A lot of them have said they've gotten used to it without objection. And we're still taking temperatures at the door. I just can't risk it. Again, like I said, this was disproportionately affected the African-American community, and I will not put my staff at risk. And they understand. They come first, period.
Jay, I want to ask you about something. I know you've had an interesting experience lately hiring a lawyer for a trademark issue. Can you tell us about that situation?
I work very intensely with autismworkforce.com. We help people hire people on the autism spectrum. And Dave, who runs it, trademarked the phrase.
You've talked about this before. In fact, you talked about connecting Dave with Stephanie, and I believe they've had conversations.
He trademarked a phrase, and somebody else was using it, and he contacted them, and they didn't stop. So he says we should really call a lawyer. So I called a lawyer I've known for years, explained that Dave's on a tight budget. And he said, don't worry about it. Famous last words. Don't worry about it. So he starts calling the other counsel. And the next thing you know, I got a $5,000 bill, $6,000 bill. So I go, whoa, this is really don't worry about it. I'll make an adjustment at the end. So now it's up to $9,000, and he gives me $1,000 credit, and extremely frustrating.
Did the lawyer do a good job?
Not particularly. Well, one mistake was he wasn't a trademark lawyer. That wasn't his specialty. I believe a trademark lawyer would have figured out that they've got 5 years to challenge a trademark, and we were about 2 weeks away from that 5 years expiring. I believe a trademark lawyer would have said, don't do anything because wait till their 5-year period is up.
How did you find that out that it was expiring?
I had to go play lawyer myself. I thought it was odd that the opposing counsel said, you've got till Friday to tell us whether you're going to settle this with us. And I thought, why is there all of a sudden the date? So all I did is Google, and there it all came up. You've got 5 years to challenge a trademark, meaning they could say, oh, we were using it first. It's not really a legitimate trademark. So then you can go right online in about 60 seconds, go to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and you can actually see what the date was that it was registered. And I realized, wow, Monday is the 5-year mark. So I'm not so sure this thing should have gone on, because if we would have known that, we would have done nothing, basically. So the end of the story is I got a big legal bill from someone that I've known for 30 years, and it's extremely disappointing. And the only place in my entire career that I haven't been taken advantage of was from legal bills, because my brother-in-law used to be my lawyer, and this guy used to work for my brother-in-law, and my brother-in-law is now retired. And it's just unfortunate that he should have told me this is starting to get expensive, and he knew he was on a tight. Nowhere during this process did he say, listen, I just want you to know this is getting expensive. And he was charging $4.70 an hour, and it's disappointing.
So if you had it to do over, you would go to a trademark attorney, and how would you handle the fee? Is there a way to protect yourself?
I would have asked them what range, how much do you think this is going to cost? And I would have found out what the hourly is, and then I could have made a decision as to whether to proceed. I believe if I did that, they would have explained to me that how long they have to challenge it. And I would hope that they would have told me right off the bat, don't do anything. Just wait until the 5 years is up. And I might not, because at that point, they can't really do anything. So that would be number one. Number two is, I guess I'm warning everyone, when somebody, and I don't want to pick on lawyers, there's lots of lovely, honest, hardworking lawyers out there.
Let me stop you there. We have one on this call.
Yes. Oh, I know. I don't want to pick on lawyers. But when a lawyer says, don't worry about it, when anybody says, don't worry about it, I certainly didn't expect it to be free. I feared, I don't know, $2,000, $3,000. And I didn't have any expectations set up front. And when he said he would discount the bill at the end, frankly, I would have thought he would have taken more than $1,000 off a $9,000 bill.
All right, Stephanie, do you have any advice as a lawyer for entrepreneurs dealing with lawyers?
Absolutely. So, of course, I'm an attorney. I do some things in-house for us, basic contracts, but I'm not a franchise attorney and I'm not a trademark lawyer. So we do have an outside firm that manages that for us. And I'll typically ask them for a budget. They know we're a scrappy comeback brand, and I'll ask, can we keep the trademark work to X budget or X number of hours, and can you notify me when you've reached this number of hours? And obviously, most law firms are going to give you a monthly statement, but I ask on top of that, have a trigger if you've reached this amount to give me a heads up that I'm 2 hours away from reaching the 20 hours that I budgeted. And they'll work with you, especially depending on the firm. And okay, I'm not going to bash Atlanta firms too much, but the rates are higher if you're in a big city. And I have found really competent counsel in Macon, Georgia, and Augusta, Georgia, so Savannah, Georgia. So you don't necessarily have to be in a big city to find really competent counsel.
I mean, the problem is, as you say, which is all good advice, but when you say they give you a monthly bill, you could rack up quite a bill in 1 month. That's the problem. That's the problem.
Or they can alert you that you've run through your budget, but there's still work that obviously has to be done. What do you do then?
He thought nothing of sending these bills out after he said, don't worry about it. I mean, it's just stunning. And I've known this guy for 30 years. And it's to say it's disappointing is a mild understatement.
I try to do as much as possible for the attorney to make it easier for them. And even if you don't have a law degree, there's certainly, you can organize the paperwork. You can make sure everything is given to them in a really structured fashion, and be very clear about what you want.
Dave did all of that. And the part that's particularly frustrating is Dave is helping autistic kids get jobs, for God's sakes. He's working like a dog. It's making a difference. And this is who, it's not like it's for my company.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. If I can just slightly switch the topic to the hiring people with autism, I want to thank you, Jay, for making those connections. That's something we're still exploring. And we do have a employee now with autism who is doing really well. And I think the key is making sure that it's very structured and that it's a safe environment. But a lot of factory or line worker tasks, which are repetitive and somewhat monotonous, are well suited.
Well, they thrive in that environment. The key, which we have universities following us now, the key is you've got to train the company. Like, here's the environment. Here, every single person that has exposure needs to understand it. Our success rate is unbelievable. Whereas some of these agencies, put square pegs in round holes, and their failure rate's 80%. We're like shooting. It's not going to continue, but so far we're like at 100%. Every person we place is working out well, and it's working. And it's all about training both the employee and the companies and bringing those two things together. And I will tell you, we got one short email from somebody that was he said, "Dear Dave, thank you for hiring my brother, Gary. He just needed someone to believe in him."
Right?
Stephanie, is the person you're referring to, is that somebody who was brought on recently?
Yes, and I don't want to say too much. I want to protect people's privacies, but
sure.
Yes. And we have a team process, you work on lines and you're a team on a line. So people on the media team are aware, and you have to interact with persons with Asperger's and autism in a certain way. So making sure they're aware of that is really important. Jay's right. It's not just training the individuals who are the workers, but it's training their team members, anyone in contact with them, to make sure they understand they might not like to be touched. They might need to have a very structured way of managing their task and their workload. So just knowing that.
Here's the issue. If you don't get it 100% right, it's going to fail. 90% won't do it, which means, for instance, you do everything right except you keep changing their schedule. It's going to throw the whole thing off. If anyone's interested, autismworkforce.com. We've got a lot of info on there. We've got a vice president of the company talking about how well it's working. And he said one thing, I laughed out loud. He says in there, you can't take things personally. I say good morning and they usually ignore me, which, that goes with, it's fine. And he got it, but they are thrilled at how well everything's working. So if you do it right, it's great. If you do it wrong, you're going to end up with a devastating failure for the employee and their families. And it's you really need to pay attention to it, but there's tremendous payoffs. This isn't just a social good thing. This is good for business, because once you get them locked in, they'll be one of your best employees.
We're running short on time, but I want to make sure we go back to Dana White and talk to you about our conversation from last week. Dana, you told us last week that you were experiencing what you called FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt about going into franchising. You said it was primarily related to some customer service issues that had come up, but throughout the course of the conversation, you seemed to be feeling a little bit better. I think Paul and Jay, I think you referred to them as having taken a little bit of a magic eraser to your FUD. I'm wondering if that lasted. How are you feeling now?
Yeah, it lasted and it grew. And not only did it grow because of further conversations with Jay, but it was conversations with the franchise consultant team. I literally had a 1-hour conversation yesterday, and their concern was that they didn't know, and they really are committed to supporting me. There's things that you just shouldn't be dealing with, and definitely shouldn't be dealing with without us. And this is one of them. But I didn't feel that this was something that they could help me with. And they said, outside of the fact that, we should be there to be able to listen to you, and we want you to know that you could have brought those feelings to us. That's why they coined the phrase, the FUD. The other part is the listeners of this podcast. I was so surprised to get the messages. One lady emailed me and said, I understand that Jay and Paul were trying to help you, but I think there were things lost because they're not women. And I think they didn't quite understand how bad it is for you. And which is funny is that when I read it, I laughed, because it was in a subsequent conversation with Jay that he said, listen, hands up, but I can't even imagine. But the listeners emailing me through LinkedIn have been, keep going, put it in perspective. One person said, which I, just has resonated with me and I've kept it with me, is understanding that when it's nasty and hurtful, it's coming from a nasty and hurtful place. And so you can't really take it and figure out how it can benefit your company and how you can improve. And that's coming from a jealousy place. So I'm not quick to say, oh, it's jealousy. No, I really try to dissect it. And I think I've gone too far with that. And they said, when it's nasty, you're too capable, you're too smart to not understand, to not get it quickly where it's coming from. So, spend a little less time on the nastiness and understand, okay, if it's nasty, it's not coming from a good place. But the listeners of this podcast have been amazing, and they just wanted to lend support. I didn't want to sound like I was whining. Nobody said that, but I was afraid I might sound that way when when we hit end. I was like, oh my gosh, did I just have a tantrum? No, I think I made a call for help. And the listeners and the people at the iFranchise Group responded, and the iFranchise Group is still responding. It's been great.
And I did say on there, I've never had anyone attack me like that, and it must be horrible. I fully acknowledge that.
You did.
Yep, he did.
I'm a little surprised that the iFranchise Group said that they could help with this. I'm just curious. Do you know what they have in mind?
Again, their thing was, it's not getting in and coming there and helping you with customer service. It's more, we want you to feel comfortable coming and talking to us. And I think after speaking with my strategy person, her name is Chris, she's amazing. It's making sure I keep focused. I think, Lauren, you put your finger on it so aptly when you said a lot of this is heightened because of you going through this process. And so the iFranchise Group, I believe, wants to be there for me when I want to talk about these issues and help me focus. Say, look, we've been doing this since the 90s, and this is what we see of Purely Boyd, and this is how we think you're doing, and this is what we know, reminding me of where I am as a business owner and what this process can do for me. Understanding that you've got private equity people already talking to you, and you're not even through your process yet. We've done your pro forma. This is what your numbers look like. This is how successful this franchise is going to be, because out of our 30 years of experience, this is where you fit in the spectrum of things. And so that's what they mean by help, but just giving me a perspective to help say, no, don't focus on that. Look at this.
One last thing before we go. Jay, last week before we signed off, you bet Paul $10 that you would have a bank loan signed, sealed, and delivered this week.
I didn't say sign, seal, deliver. I can only tell you that my credit, I have one of those credit monitors, and they got dinged yesterday from the bank. They checked my credit.
$10, Jay.
And I have every expectation that...
You said you would have a bank loan next week.
No, I didn't say it was going to be done by Thursday.
They're checking your credit. You don't have a bank loan?
I do. Is today Friday? No, today's Thursday.
Okay.
They're checking my credit. Today's Thursday. Probably by tomorrow, I'll have a bank loan. I'll stick my neck out and tell you, I will be very surprised if this doesn't go through.
All right. My thanks to Jay Goltz, Stephanie Stuckey, and Dana White. As always, guys, thanks so much for sharing. Wait. Don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN @21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.